Easy now. Papa got things making his life
come down. Ooh, you make my high come down. Always tripping when you come around. I'ma have to cut you off, like right now. You see, I don't want to drive me. You can say that for your mama. Maybe you should smoke some. Me try the marijuana. I was never you good. The vibe was straight. Showed you a couple of things and they ain't finished change. I treated you right. Everything was a gift from a time to your bag and the color on your lip.
Welcome to the Seahawks Man to Man podcast, powered by The Athletic. Shout out to the company. My name is Michael-Shawn and I'm here with my co-host, Christopher Kidd. Make sure you follow us both up on the tweet machine. You guys know where to follow us on there, so I'll just continue to plug the YouTube channel, Seahawks Man to Man. That's the number 2 man on YouTube. Chris, talk to him.
What is up, everybody? It's your boy, Christopher Kidd. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at CKIDD206, and that's CKID206.
We are coming to you right after the Seahawks lost to the Dallas Cowboys in their final preseason game. They lost 27-26. The Seahawks 0-3 in the preseason, but that doesn't really matter. The third preseason game is always about deciding who's going to be a starter versus a backup, who's going to make the team versus being on the practice squad, and who's going to make the practice squad versus being unemployed. Of those three scenarios I just outlined, the most important one, obviously, is the quarterback competition. And I first would like to say thank you to Pete Carroll, who did not allow, I mean, this is mostly a media thing, but he did not allow the quarterback competition to be like leaked or have us drag it on through the weekend, have me checking my phone all weekend to see if some national reporters scooped us or something like that. I have to drop everything because I'm moving this weekend. So that would be awful to just be driving the U-Haul and then, Tom Pelissero says Geno's the starter or something. Pete said, screw that. He announced it after the game. He said, hey, unprompted. He was like, hey, look, Gino won the job. He said he's earned it. You know what? Actually, let me read exactly what Pete Carroll said. I think his wording is very important, and Chris and I are going to get into that. Pete said Gino's going to start. He's going to start the opener. He's earned it. He's won the job. Went on to say that Drew ran out of time in making his bid for it. In the meantime, Drew's got to keep on battling because he can play. He's got all kinds of stuff in him. I want him to be ready at a moment's call. He's going to keep growing and pushing and developing as a fantastic player. I have no problem with playing him too. We're fortunate to have two guys who can go. If he gets his chance, he'll be ready to go and try to light it up. End quote there. That is from head coach Pete Carroll. And there was some other parts of what he had to say and what Geno had to say and what Drew had to say after the game that really gets into why Geno Smith won the job. But I feel like, Chris, we have to start with the most important part of this whole scenario is that we watched the game together at my crib. That is very junky, again, because I am moving. I think that's the first time we watched the game together.
2 years.
Yeah. Quite some time there. As everyone who listens to the podcast knows, we had a wager on the quarterback competition. And I want to say this, to be very clear, I can wager on this and not have that affect my coverage. I got called a Geno Smith homer online the other day. I think it was today. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, go read everything I've written, tweeted. Like, come on. You would never know that I had some skin in the game a little bit. Anyway, I won the bet. Chris has already given me my $100. In lieu of a accepted speech or an award speech, Chris, the floor is yours. If you would like to say any words at this time after your loss.
I don't know what to say. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought, oh, Pete's gonna go with the guy that has the upside. Doesn't really matter. The upside didn't help because guess what? You turn the ball over. It's tough to make a case for you to be a starter. It really is. You could argue, we'll get into it. You could argue that Drew's turnovers cost the Seahawks the game. Points were put on the board because of turnovers. When you do that, you're not making a good case for yourself to be the starter. Geno, he might not have wowed you. He didn't turn the ball over, though. That's what it comes down to. Can you run the offense the way I need you to without turning the ball over? Sure, he had a couple 3-and-outs. Sure, he got sacked. But you know what he didn't do? He didn't turn the ball over in costly situations that resulted in the other team scoring points. And that's where Drew, that was a difference right there. And for me, all I have to say is don't bet on Drew Lock. Maybe next year. Maybe the year after that.
Oh, you would bet on him? You sound like you would bet on him again.
Nah, I was just giving some hope, man. I would not. I don't think I could unless I saw drastic improvement. I don't see a need to bet on Drew. Now, maybe if, we'll talk off air or something, I'll be like, hey, 17 weeks, you think Drew starts a few games, and this is not because Geno goes down with an injury. This is because Geno isn't winning games or he's turning the ball over. Is that a possibility? Maybe we go down that road. But for right now, I got nothing for you. I was wrong. I'm glad I only put $100 down. I could have went more, and I definitely have spent a lot of money on gambling. But $100 is cool. It sucks that I lost it because would have been nice to have $100. But Drew Lock did not. He did not perform well Friday night against the Cowboys. And we'll get into the game, but it didn't go his way.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I won as well. As anyone know who's moved? Is that the way you say that? Yeah. Anyone who's had to move knows that moving just has just random expenses to it. Like, it's insane. Like, they're moving into a new apartment. The security deposit at the new place is $1,000. What? I've never seen a security deposit that high. There was a $300 administrative fee just to apply, non-refundable. I was like, when did they start doing that? Anyway, sorry, I don't know. This is not the Mike is Moving podcast, but still, that $100 would have just stung a little bit. So I want to get into why Gino won the job. And I think the way that the quarterback battle has been framed, and maybe that's on our part, maybe that's just on Pete Carroll's part. I feel like, and I talked about this on a pod before, that the competition was never fair. Nor did I necessarily care that it was, but I feel like we had to acknowledge that it was never fair. Pete wanted Gino to win the job before Gino even re-signed with the damn team. I watched him look at us at the NFL owners meetings in March when Gino was still a free agent and say, hey, this is why I'm encouraging Gino to re-sign with us. He knows our stuff. I want him back, right? That was while Drew and Jacob Eason were the only guys on the roster. Once you start campaigning for guys to come back so they can lead your quarterback competition, like, that means you want them to start. So I feel like we needed to keep that more in mind when Gino was getting all the first team reps and everything. It was always Gino's job to lose. That's important. It's not that they just, so, like, think of it like a 100-meter dash, right? Both people start the little, the starting line in the blocks in their stance or whatever. It's an even race. Both guys have to travel 100 yards to win the race, right? This was not that. Again, I don't necessarily care that it wasn't that, but I feel like if you look at it that way, it makes more sense of how we got to this point. Like, Gino was starting, what would you say, like 30 yards ahead in a 100-yard dash, and 25 yards, something like that. Either way, he had a head start. So basically, to win the race, all Gino had to do was not trip and fall, right? Whereas Drew had to be Usain Bolt and catch his ass. Like that, if you frame it that way, and that's how it's always been framed in my head. And watching those guys and talking to the quarterbacks and talking to people in the building and talking to Pete, I would like to think I kind of wrote it that way too, or when we talked about it on the pod. But if not, that's okay. Could be doing it now. Think of it that way. Don't think of it as just both guys started at the same point and just had to race. That's not what it was. And think of it as, I text somebody this in one of the group chats, one of the 50 million group chats I'm in. I feel like I'm in way too many. It's like, it's not even, they hit the group chat. It was like, yo, congrats to Geno Smith for winning the job. I said, well, put it another way. Congrats to Geno Smith for not losing the job.
That's big.
Those are not the same thing. One is much easier to do than the other. Like it's
Hey.
you give me a 30-yard head start in a 100-meter race. As long as I don't trip and fall, I should win. Right? That's how that would go when you have a head start. And so I think that part right there, Chris, I don't know if we talked about it enough, or we talked about enough maybe by other media or maybe fans, maybe even the coaching staff. But I don't think it was made clear enough that Drew had a really uphill battle, perhaps more than everyone, including yourself, put money on him, maybe thought about, when this all got kicked off.
I really was under the mindset that he would play better. And we saw flashes. You have the stats of how practice went between the two. You could argue that Drew had a better practice against the twos than Geno had against the ones. And then you could also make the argument that, okay, Drew even played okay against the ones. It was just some throws that were not great, and that was on both sides. But overall, you can make the argument that in practice, Drew didn't look that bad, whereas Geno might have struggled more. But then in the games where it matters, Drew was on scene struggling more. And that was the separation right there. It's okay to struggle in practice. They want to see how you do in games when it really matters, when you're going up against someone that you don't know. That's where I think the separation really happened in the games. Because to your point, Geno didn't fall. Geno didn't have a turnover. He played sound.
He didn't have a turnover in any of the games. Yeah.
He didn't have any turnovers. That right there says one thing. He can take care of the football. And then you go to Drew, if I'm not mistaken, he had 4 turnovers, 1 fumble, and then 3 interceptions in 2 preseason games. That is very, very hard to say, I'm going to roll with this guy. It's very hard. Unless Drew was out there throwing for 350 yards and was a gunslinger. Okay, but that wasn't the situation. And I shouldn't have bet on Drew. I now see that while he's a gunslinger, he also makes throws that you shouldn't make. For example, the first interception he threw, and it was intended for D. Eskridge, you got to throw away from the DB, especially in a stick concept like that, just a curl route, 5-7 yards. If you're going to laser it in there, at least throw it to the outside shoulder away from the DB. And people are going to make the argument, D's got to come back to the ball. Sure, D is supposed to come back to the ball. But even then, if you throw it to the outside shoulder and he doesn't come back to the ball, the DB now has to go through D to make the play. And that could be a pass interference. D can make the play. You never know what could happen.
It's probably just a PBU at worst.
At worst, it's broken up, and you can live for another down. Or if I'm not mistaken, that was third down.
It was 3rd and 9, so they would have punted. But
so you have to punt. But hey, that's better than a turnover. You're just moving. You're just kicking the ball away and hoping that your defense can get you back on the field. That's what you're hoping for. Not a turnover where momentum shifts and now this team has a chance to go and score a touchdown. Those are things that you don't want to see. And that was ultimately the story for Drew Lock. Turnovers, not the best throw. The one throw that I'll just bring it up now, is when I think it was Aaron Fuller was stumbling and he threw it low and it hit him. He has to make that catch. Aaron was stumbling. But outside of that, the other 2 interceptions, that's on Drew. You just can't make those throws. He almost threw 4. He threw one on an out route. I forget who it was to, but the DB just jumped the hell out of it, diving play, and didn't make the catch. And I'm like, damn, this is not good. And I mean, to be honest, after the first interception, I knew it was kind of over. I didn't really have faith after that. I know he went down and scored the very next drive, but those are things
good,
that yeah, that was great. That was great to see that he bounced back and he was able to go down the field and score, because you want to see how people respond. You throw an interception, okay, how do you respond now? Do you throw another one immediately, or do you go down and score points? He went and scored points, so that was a plus, but another interception, 2 interceptions to 1 touchdown doesn't really help. And then, yeah, it just wasn't a great day overall.
I want to read some quarterback stats here, just from the preseason. Let's see. I'm scrolling here. I try to make it so I can look at you and the audience and still have my stats up. I'm still new to using a Mac. So in the preseason, Geno completed 23 of 39 passes. That's 16 incompletions. Look at me doing math on the show. I think I got.
How many were dropped?
Yeah, I have 7 drops, with one where Noah Fant doesn't get his foot down. Not a drop, but incompletion. Like the ball hits the guy's hands. That's half of his incompletions hitting his guys where they should catch it, right? So then you have he threw for 256 yards, which is just a little less than Drew. That's in 13 drives, about 12 full drives, because I'm not counting that his final drive against the Bears, which is just 3 dump downs to DJ Dallas. Drew didn't throw for any touchdowns, nor did he throw any interceptions. Drew Lock, or excuse me, I think Geno. I think I said Drew. Excuse me.
Geno, I know what you meant.
Yeah, Geno didn't throw any touchdowns in the preseason, nor did he throw any interception. Drew Lock was 24 of 39, so about 15 incompletions. I had him with like one drop and a possible, like two-ish drops, 273 yards. Again, a little bit more than Geno. 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and 1 lost fumble. So, by my count, Drew Lock led 15 drives in the preseason, 5 against the Steelers, and then 10 against the
Cowboys.
He had 4 touchdowns on those series. This is just what the drive ended as: 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 1 fumble, 3 field goals, and 4 punts. That's just kind of all over the place.
No consistency.
Yeah, it's volatile. That's the word I've been using. It's one of my favorite vocab words right now is volatile. And that's just hard for a coach like Pete Carroll to accept, right? He would like to know on a consistent basis that you're going to go out there, protect the football, and get the ball to the playmakers and not give the ball to the other team, right? Listen to this quote from Pete Carroll after the game. He said, this was a great one. He got asked about how big protecting the football is, right? He kind of got baited into giving like an answer that's kind of very pro Geno. But anyway, he says, it's a huge statement, taking care of the football. We've been one of the best teams in the NFL over the last bunch of years, taking care of the football and owning it. It's really hard to get it away from us with the fumbles and stuff like that. Our guys are fantastic at it. Decision-making goes along with that, treasuring that football. It's so hard to win when you turn it over. We've lived for a long time with a big conscience about that, and we'll keep it going, end quote. There's your ball game, folks.
Yeah.
Like, Geno is the higher floor, right? Like, Geno at his, like, worst is bad, but it's not like the end of the world. He's probably not going to be the reason you get blown out, at least not at this stage of his career. With the Jets, perhaps. This stage of his career, like in year 10, probably not. Drew represents some upside. Like, there was some throws, and some of the best throws in the preseason were from Drew. Like that ball to Penny Hart today, or Friday night, smooth. Colby Parkinson, like little seam ball against the Steelers that got popped out.
Great ball.
Money ball. And then some of the worst throws in the preseason were from Drew. Like that second interception you talked about today. That ball hitting Deshaun Wright in the hands. You know what team Deshaun Wright plays for? Dallas. That's a problem, And there were some air mails too. The worst throws, I should say, between Geno and Drew. If you count Jacob Eason, Jacob throws some. Jacob doesn't have any touch. He's just lasers at all time. That boy's got a cannon, just with no control over the cannon. Anyway, between the two, Drew probably had some of the best passes and some of the worst passes. Geno was just had passes. They hit his guys in the hand, and either they caught it or they didn't. He had one really bad miss to Bo Melton against the Bears, and then Drew had some. I mean, Drew had one that almost got intercepted against the Steelers. It was, I think, a fade ball to Aaron Fuller in the end zone before they ended up throwing a touchdown to Derek Young. So, like, that's the issue. Drew might have that higher ceiling. I actually wouldn't even say might. Drew probably has a higher ceiling. Like, if you just ask the two dudes to just, hey, man, I'm going to hand you both a football. One of you guys go do as dope as shit as you can. Drew will probably come out and do some doper shit. Now, if you go ask those guys, hey, man, I'm about to hand each you guys a football. Don't go out there and screw it up. Geno, at this point in his career, is better at executing that, whereas Drew, he's probably going to mess it up. Like, he had some, even though all the turnovers weren't because of him, I think he had, four turnovers in 15 drives is a lot. But let's say, like, 2 of those were just, like, squarely on him. Let's say the Aaron Fuller drop is on Aaron, and then the one of D. Eskridge, it's like an interception and a possible, maybe. The other 2, though, he blows a protection assignment against the Steelers. They lose the game. What's the other? Oh, the other one, like I said, hits Deshaun right in the hands. The Cowboys end up going to score. Geno is probably not going to be the reason your team goes out and wins a game. But he's also probably not going to be the reason the Seahawks go out there and lose the games. And I understand how that sounds after last year, where he threw the interception against the Rams, and they did lose. However, Tyler Lockett fell. I'm not really tripping off like his decision making there. The strip sack against the Steelers, inexcusable. I don't care if it's TJ Watt. Can't do that. Against the Saints, they were just kind of screwed. It was time to go win. And I don't think Geno had like a back-breaking play. He just didn't go win. And then against the Jags, he torched them. So, like, that was encouraging play for Pete Carroll. It was like, we were in all of those games. We just need to go finish, and he kind of put the onus on the guys around Geno. And you know what, Chris? This preseason, you could see him putting the onus on the guys around Geno again. Dog, couldn't no one catch for 3 games.
Yeah, Derek Young, man, he struggled making some plays. He made plays in the second half, but man, did he drop some early. Not good. You got to make those plays. Help your quarterback.
Derek had a drop in every preseason game.
That's not a good stat.
You can't do that. I don't care what round you were drafted. You just can't. You can't do that. Bo Melton had multiple drops. I think Penny Hart even had a drop.
Yeah.
Aaron Fuller has had a couple hit his hands. He doesn't
Cade
come
Johnson
down.
had one today. I was like, damn, dude. Oh, actually, no, that was tipped. I forgot.
Yeah,
that was
the
tipped.
Cade Johnson one is tough. It's one of those ones where it gets tipped like a millisecond before it hits you. Yeah, that throws the whole trajectory off. Cade actually had a nice toe tap as well in there. But like to get back to kind of Geno and Drew and their comparisons, that really is what it comes down to. Pete picking the higher floor. Like Geno is like a 8-8 type of guy. I don't think they'll go 8-8, but you guys get what I mean when I say that. Whereas with Drew, it's like, hey, we might be able to win like 13 games in his joint. It's like, we also might lose 13 games. And when you're dealing with an offense, you know who Drew Lock would be more of a fit for, I should say. Like, turning it over is bad for all coaches. But you know who would be more of a fit for is like Bruce Arians. You know what I mean? Like, so a coach like that who he's more like, hey, man, just chuck it. One of our guys is down there. Let's hope he jumps over the other guy. Whereas Pete's like, don't chuck it, because when the ball's in the air, it could go to the other guy. And with these defensive-minded head coaches, that risk-averse attitude, they want their quarterback to reflect that. It kind of goes into why Pete and Russ didn't really rock. Russ wanted to cook more, and cooking comes with risks. And Pete was like, you might burn the house down. You might, with all this cooking you doing.
Yeah.
Whereas Pete's just like, bro, if you just make cereal, what I'm saying? There's no, we're going to eat. It's not going to be gourmet, but the house won't burn. I guarantee the house won't burn down if you just make cereal, right? So I think as much as because I'm explaining it this way because I feel like, and Chris, you probably have caught this too, I feel like a lot of people just wanted Drew to start.
So yeah, people, I just feel wanted to see something refreshing and new. Everyone has seen Geno. He has started in this league before, but his role now has been a backup. He was a backup to Russ for quite a bit some time. He was a backup his previous time. I think he was with the Giants, if I'm not mistaken. He was a backup.
Yeah, Giants and Chargers, yeah.
He was a backup. So he has built his career around being the backup. You were able to see what he was with the starter, and it didn't pan out. And in the 3-game sample with the Seahawks, 1 and 2, not the worst thing, but it wasn't the best thing either. And to your point, sure, it was 1-game possession, and Pete was already leading with that. That's why he wanted to bring him back. And then you look at someone like Drew Lock, where there's still upside. He's young. He can throw the ball far. There's some upside. There's talent. And that's what I think people were just like, we want to see Drew. We know what Geno is. And people are going to make that same argument as the season progresses. We know what Geno is. But the thing is, in the games, he's not going to have those costly turnovers that we saw with Drew. And we saw it in preseason. So if he's doing this against the twos, what do you think is going to happen against the Broncos? What do you think is going to happen in week 2 against the Niners, whose defense is pretty good? Those are things you got to think about. And I think Pete really believes that putting Geno out there gives him the best possibility. And that's why you put $100 on him, because you realize you're not going to turn the ball over. And he didn't turn the ball over in preseason. I mean, of course, he didn't light it up. He wasn't slinging the ball everywhere. He was taking what the defense was giving him. He got sacked a few times, but you know what he didn't do? Turn the football over, and that's the difference right there.
Also, I think, and this makes sense, right? Everyone was kind of, not everyone, but a lot of people looked at this as fans, right? Even when I tweeted this a little bit, people were like, Mike, I'll take him being volatile. Like, it's more fun. I was like, I didn't respond to many people because I got it a bunch, but I'll respond here. That's easy to say when your job's not on the line. That volatile, the guy being volatile doesn't impact your chances of going to the unemployment line, right? Like what did you just say, Chris? We know what Geno is. Well, if you're a coach, you want to know what you're gonna get on Sundays.
Yeah.
That consistency matters, and not just for the head coach. That's everybody. Like everybody wants to know. They want to know that if we practice on Wednesday, we practice on Thursday, and practice on Friday, and play on Sunday, what happens on Sunday will look like what we did Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. At least it's likely to. And I think that knowing what someone is from a coach's standpoint matters a hell of a lot more to the fans who may just be bored as hell by watching, an established product that they just feel to be boring or whatever. Because some people probably today watching the Cowboys game was like, yo, that was fun. You never know what each throw is going to be. It could be a touchdown for us. It could be a touchdown for them. It could be a big play for us. It could be a big play for them. Who knows? That's the fun of it. And as a consumer, I can feel you. You know what I'm saying? Like just watching the game, like, this is great. It's like watching Jameis. I love 2019 Jameis. I check the box score every Sunday to see how many touchdowns and interceptions Jameis would throw. Right? What did he do that year? He had like 30. He had 30 touchdowns. I think he threw more than 30. I think it was like 33 touchdowns to like 30 interceptions or something like that.
No, it was 30-30. I know it was 30 touchdowns for sure and 30 interceptions. It might have been 33 for sure, but he hit the 30-30 club.
Hit the 30-30. I just don't think he stayed on the nose. I think quiet is kept. I think Jameis that year threw more touchdowns than Russ, who threw 31. Here, I'm going to check it while we're talking right now. Let's see. Jameis Winston.
33 and 30, yeah.
Yeah, it was 33. Okay.
Insane.
That's what I figured. Like that season was fun for me. I loved watching Jameis play that year. But you know what I also wasn't that year? A Bucks fan. Because if I was a Bucks fan, that would have stunk to have a guy. And Jameis also that year had like 7 pick sixes or something like that. Like
insane.
Like 6. I think he broke the single season record for pick sixes in a season, which is just nuts. He had a couple like game-ending pick sixes too. I think his last throw of the year was a pick six for them to finish like right at 8-8. As a coach, that will drive you freaking nuts. And most coaches, it probably even drove Bruce Arians nuts, But then Tom Brady calls, you're like, all right, we got to go with Brady. Like that. That is fun for the consumer. Shout out to my my former beat partner, Aaron Fentress, writes for the Oregonian. He worked with me that year. We'd be in the Seahawks press box streaming the Bucks game. You know why? We were like, when is Jameis going to throw a pick? And then when is Jameis going to throw a touchdown? Like guys like Drew Lock, guys like Jameis, they're like the Marcus Peters or Trevon Diggs of quarterbacks. I like watching Marcus Peters because you never know when he's going to get a pick six, and you never know when he's going to give up a 67-yard bomb. Trevon Diggs is the same way. He gave up 1,000 yards in coverage last year for the Cowboys and had like 11 interceptions. It's boom or bust, and coaches tend not to lean into that. They would rather a finished product, unless there's like a rookie. Like if Mariota, for instance, in Atlanta was like pretty consistently solid, but Desmond Ridder was like a little bit more boom or bust, they might just roll with Desmond. He's the younger guy, he's rookie, cheaper. Or whatever. He's actually probably not that much cheaper, but actually he is. But you guys get my point there. It's just kind of easier for look at it. I feel like everyone should just like take a step back and just look at it from a coach view, and then you see it. Now, to be very clear, and Chris, you can weigh in this as well. I don't think it really matters in terms of the grand scheme of the season. I don't think Geno Smith or Drew Lock is the guy in 2023. That's for sure. I don't think in terms of like locker room command, it really mattered. I think everyone kind of got used to spouting the company line of, hey, I like both guys. They got good arm strength. They both had a good camp, yada, yada, yada. Like Will Dissly, every time you ask him, he's like, look, man, that's above my pay grade. I'm going to run block for whoever, and I'm going to go out and catch passes from whoever throw it to me. Like that's the gist of Uncle Will's sentiment there. And everyone kind of says something similar. Everyone makes sure not to lean towards one guy or the other, and some of that is probably the company line. And some of that is probably just because the guys are pretty much the same. But I think it's a mindset thing. One guy's mindset aligns a little better with the coaches, and he can he can execute it. Let me read you this quote. I'm all about reading stuff today, as you guys can tell. This is from Geno Smith after the game, also asked about turnovers. He said, "That's the number one way to lose games in the NFL, not protecting the football. Earlier in my career, I had some issues with that, and I learned very quickly the quarterback's main job is to protect the football as well as scoring points and being dynamic. I really think that when I came here to Seattle, I turned a corner in terms of protection of the football. Coach preaches it every day. It's the motto of the team, the organization, all about the ball. When I'm out there, I'm focusing on doing the right things, making the right reads, obviously staying aggressive, but being smart." Boy, that sounds like Pete Carroll wrote that. That does. That sounds like it was straight from Pete Carroll. The quarterback's main job is to protect the football as well as scoring points and being dynamic. And you can kind of see where some of the stuff just didn't align with Russ. Russ is like, yeah, protect the football, but my main job is to be that dude, right? At least as he advanced in his career. And it's interesting that Geno, one reason why I like that quote is because he does mention that earlier in his career, he did not have that. I mean, I still think, let me double check. I still think Geno has more career interceptions than he does.
He does.
Like turnovers were a big problem for him. And you can tell that he made the conscious choice when he was coming here, like, hey, if nothing else, I'm just going to not turn it over and I'll be fine. Geno has 37 regular season interceptions and 34 touchdowns. So he still has more career interceptions than touchdowns. A lot of that was just stinking it up when he was a rookie and a second-year guy with the Jets. But you can tell he had that shift. And when I heard Geno speak today, he sounded like a guy in year 10. Whereas Drew doesn't sound like a kid necessarily. But like you mentioned earlier, he's a younger guy. He's younger than both of us. We're both 30. Drew's younger than us. And I bet you that if Drew gets another chance, like if he goes to another team, he's going to start to sound like Geno. And I bet you he's going to just go out there and be like, you know what I got to do? I must just not throw picks. That's it. He's going to go out there and just try to not throw picks as opposed to going out there and, like Geno said, being aggressive but being smart. He's just going to go out there and just try to not throw picks. It's almost like being a rookie. A lot of rookies, you talk to them, especially on defense, they'll tell you, man, my first year, I was just going out there and trying to not mess up, not miss tackles, not blow assignments, not drop passes. And then it's the conservative attitude. With quarterbacks, depending on how it goes, you can kind of work in reverse. And as you get older, you're trying to just not screw up, especially if you keep losing quarterback battles. Drew's lost 2 already in 4 years in the league. That's pretty tough. But I think those quotes today were really important. Like as much as we were talking about, because what plays were on Drew today and what plays were on Geno. Drew said it. He's like, there's 3 throws I want back. He said, I got to learn from the bad plays and protect the football. There you go. Like that's it. That's why, as we've talked about, it feels like ad nauseum now. Russ is going to Russ. I will say this though, Chris, I feel like we're getting robbed of Russ versus Drew week 1. That would have been kind of fun. The drama there, 2 guys against their former teams, week 1 on Monday Night Football. That's kind of fun.
I guess the thing is, how long does Drew stay out there? Because he's probably going to throw a pick or 2 against the Broncos.
Russ might throw a pick or 2 against the Seahawks. Who knows? But you know what we do know? We got Twitter questions, baby. Twitter questions. We got quite a few. You ready, Mike? How many? There was only like 8 last time I checked. Did we get a bunch more?
It's like 18 now, so 10 more. Not too bad for a late night one.
Yeah, no, it's 11 o'clock.
All right, we'll start things off with the homie Sam at Sammy C521. What's better, low ceiling, high floor, Geno? High ceiling, low floor, Drew. Also, there's 4+ potential starters from this one draft. How much credit do Pete and John get?
Wait, say the back part of that again?
Also, there's 4+ potential starters from this one draft. So from this year's draft, there's 4+ potential starters. How much credit do John and Pete get?
I don't understand the back half of that. From this last draft class, there's 4 starters?
Potential, yeah. So you have Cross, Abe Lucas.
Oh, I thought we were still talking quarterback. Sorry.
Oh. No, yeah. Sorry, I guess I didn't make that clear. But yeah, he's talking about 4+ potential starters from this one draft. How much credit do Pete and John get?
Okay, what was the first part was what's the
So
better
the
the
first
high
part
floor?
was low ceiling, high floor equals Geno. High ceiling, low floor equals Drew. What is better?
That's a good question. And I kind of talked about that a little. It depends on where your franchise is. And Pete Carroll's still trying to convince these guys that they're not rebuilding, right? They're trying to go out there and win. And you want to try to go out there and not get embarrassed and not have to overcome a bunch of turnovers and stuff like that. Like the defense today actually did a really good job, I thought. And Pete Carroll kind of shouted them out. They turned the ball over 5 times and lost by 1. Like that's I mean, they were playing Dallas scrubs, but I mean, the bunch of guys who were playing for the Seahawks are not going to play in the NFL ever again, probably after this. So it was relatively even. You just don't want to put yourself in that position. And I think it really depends on where your team is. It also depends on how high that ceiling actually is. I don't actually think Drew's is that high. I think the term arm talent is getting overused here a little bit. Like accuracy is part of arm talent for me when I hear that. Like I think being able to throw off platform and being able to like sidearm and throw off your back foot and all that, like that stuff is cool if it gets to the receiver. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't really care if you can throw a no look if it goes to the defense. So, like, I think arm talent in that regard is a phrase, that you often hear with Drew, which is true, but like accuracy should be included in that. Like the Super Bowl that Mahomes lost, that was arm talent. That boy was fully horizontal from the ground and threw it sidearm and hit his receiver smooth in the face in the end zone from like 30 yards out. That is arm talent. Being able to just throw off your back foot really hard is not arm talent. Like getting the ball to your intended target is arm talent. So I think that, if your arm talent means that you also might throw a bunch of interceptions, that your ceiling is not that high to me. So as much as we just talked about the floor ceiling discussion, I don't think Drew's ceiling is actually super duper high, because the number of outstanding throws are not there. Like Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, even Kyler Murray, those guys, they got arm talent, man. They make a lot of throws in a row that are like, damn, I see why someone took you in the first round, or I see why you won the Heisman. Like they do that enough. And the what the hell was that throws are few and far between. If you have just as many dope ass throws as you do dumbass throws, that's not high ceiling to me. So I just interpret that phrase a little different. But that is a good question though. To the point about the 4 starters in the draft class, who are we calling starters here?
So you're looking at Abe Lucas potentially, right tackle, but I think Jake probably has that.
No, Abe's one. Abe and Cross. Who else?
Okay. Kobe.
I don't know if Kobe starts.
And then probably not Tariq.
See, I don't know if Tariq starts either. Is it Sidney Jones? Is it Artie Burns? That's a tough one too. I guess that's a potential starter. Boye Mafe is not starting. And then who else we got? Oh, I guess Kenneth Walker. But he's not like the starter either.
He's not even healthy.
Yeah, it's like 2 and a possible, which is decent from a draft class. We'll see how they perform. I think Kobe could start down the line. I think there is a lot of good potential down the line. I don't really care how many of those guys are starting rookie year other than Cross. Cross had to start. But everyone else, I feel like they have like 5 potential starters for next year, that is promising. They get some credit for that. They should.
What will be the top story now that the QB competition has been won? And this is from Chris L at Rosebug_22.
The top storyline is still the quarterbacks, and that does not change. I was put it this way. I was at a conference. It was all of the NFL writers at the Athletic. I want to say this was 2018 or 2019. And this was I think it was 2018. It was our first time. No, it was 2019. It was our first time as a staff getting together. We got together at the combine. It was all the big bosses. It was all the writers. most of the editors there, and we sat in a bunch of meetings. And one of the meetings was somebody from like the analytics team. I forget who the guy was, but he showed like a slideshow breaking down a bunch of stuff. One of the things that was most notable was what stories performed the best. And for the NFL staff, it was broken down by what the stories are about. I think there were some numbers in there about story length and what days stories published, all that other stuff. But it was by far a little graph that they had up. I think it was actually a table or chart, whatever. I don't know. A bar graph. It was a bar graph. The bar graph had at the top, and it went down, which stories about which people performed the best. Head coach and quarterback stories blew everything else out of the water, and it was not close. Didn't matter the market, didn't matter the team, didn't matter the writer, didn't matter what day it published. None of that. Didn't matter the length. If you write about your quarterback and if you write about your head coach, I think GM might be in there too. But like those just hit even more than writing about a superstar. So like even if you take it, and it's not just writing, it's radio, it's TV, it's all of that. If you take this team, for example, if I was to just spend like a huge deep dive, big expose magazine style story on Geno Smith, that is about to pop. It'll pop more than a thing, probably on Jamal Adams. It probably will, or DK, because that's how much quarterbacks move the needle in this industry. That's why the NFL is making the rules such that they can market the quarterbacks easier and score more points and yada, yada, yada. So the face of the game will always be a quarterback from this point on. It won't be no more running backs, no other stuff like that. So the top storylines will continue to be the quarterback. It's a quarterback-driven league. Everybody will tell you that. And your defense is all about making the quarterback uncomfortable. Your offense is all about making your quarterback comfortable. Coaches who win a lot in this league typically have quarterbacks. Look at the coaches who was doing it for a while. Andy Reid, Pete Carroll had the same quarterback for 10 years. Sean Payton had the same one for like 15. Mike Tomlin's been able to get it done with some substitutes, but largely had Big Ben. That whole time. Who else? Obviously Belichick and Brady, Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy. Like quarterbacks. You have a quarterback, you stay employed for a long time. So that's not going to change, even though we know who the starter is.
Sticking with the quarterback, this one is from the homie Adam Nathan at Adam Nathan.
Yo, Adam, what up? What up? Congrats on the baby. Happy for you.
Is it crazy to think that no matter how bad Geno is, Pete will never give the ball to Locke out of fear of what he might do with it?
No. I don't think so. Let me read you another quote. I'm all about reading quotes today. This is amazing. This quote is from Pete Carroll, and it is about Drew Lock. Pete was asked, did you learn that like Drew could be a playmaker or something like that? And he was like, oh, he can play. I don't have any question that he can play. I really don't. He's got all the athleticism. He's got arm strength. He's got arm talent. He's got creativity about him. He's going to be a fantastic football player soon. Just didn't quite have enough time to beat out a guy who knew exactly what he was doing and who just stayed at it and just won the job because of his consistency and really his performance. End quote there. Like Pete thinks Drew can play. Like that, I don't think he's blowing smoke. I don't think Pete has been blowing smoke this whole time. He's been telling us that Geno's leading. He gave the job to Geno. There you go. And he talked a lot about turnovers the day he made the decision and consistency. Pete thinks Drew can play, and he thinks Drew can protect the ball. He just wants to see it on a more consistent basis, which makes sense. Like, again, Drew did not turn the ball over every day in practice. I think Drew had, I heard he had an interception while we were in Vegas. I heard Michael Jackson picked him off. He threw one to Tariq Woolen. I saw that in practice. I don't even know if he had another one. He might have just thrown two in all the camp, maybe three if I'm missing one. But for the most part, Drew kept the ball out of harm's way in practice. Like Pete's seen it, so he knows he can ball. And I think it'll take a lot for Drew to play while Geno was still healthy. Like they would have to get shellacked in some game. I'm talking like what they used to do to teams when they was dropping 50. Remember that run they dropped like 50 in like 3 straight games, something like that in 2012, 13, or whatever. They would need to be on the wrong end of that. And it's like, yeah, I gotta change guys. I don't think Pete's afraid of what Drew can do. He knows Drew can make that throw. He made the penny hard.
Yep.
He does. He just, like, the first thing, when Michael Bennett did his sideline interview with Pete, Michael Bennett, who's great on TV, by the way. When Michael Bennett did his sideline interview in the third quarter, he said, "What have you thought about Drew's play?" The first thing Pete said was he had those 2 turnovers. And the next thing Pete said, though, was we just got to take those out. Like, he wants to believe that Drew can protect the ball. So his want to believe that is enough that he'll keep Drew on the roster and encourage him to keep, staying ready just in case.
From one Jimmy to another. This is at Jimmy Lee, Jimmy_Lee1. Is Jimmy G completely out of the question if he's cut?
No, I don't think so. I think you got to consider it if he's cut. The problem is he doesn't know the offense, so it would take him a while. And most people will tell you in the league that everyone's running versions of the same concepts. They just call them something different, or this thing has a different name, or this is numbers based, or this is words based in terms of the play call. So a lot of it is the same, but you still got to know all that stuff. And where that in particular is really important is a few things for the quarterbacks. You need to know the protections. So you need to be able to relay to your center and all of your linemen, hey, shift this way, do this, account for this blitz. Like, all of that. You have to know all of that language on the fly. You can't just keep calling timeouts, whatever to do. So that language is important. You have to know all those plays. You have to be able to get this. You have to get the team in the right run plays. So you have to know all of those. So you have to be able to change the plays at the line of scrimmage. You have to know everything that they want to do in the red zone. You have to know everything for 2-minute situations, and you need to know everything for your third down calls. That's a lot of stuff to just know. That's why training camp is so important, to do those installs and everything. So while Jimmy G is probably more talented than Geno and Drew, and Seattle would probably give him a call and see if his shoulder's okay in the event that he's cut, which I believe has to happen here before the 1st of September. I think that's one of the unofficial deadlines. I got to go catch up on our Niners coverage. I haven't been reading it lately, but no, I don't think it's out of the question. It's out of the question that he comes in and saves the day on the 2022 season. Put it that way. But I don't think it's out of the question he ends up in a Seahawks uniform.
This one's from Jimmy as well. If Miles, Adams, and Michael Jackson make the team, then who would be a surprise cut?
I don't think there needs to be a surprise cut for Michael Jackson to make the team. So I have a 53-man roster projection. My editor just hit me about when it's due. I have to check. I think he said he wants it on Sunday, I think. So I'll sit down and do it. But in my head, I have 6 corners making the team. I have Kobe and Tariq, 2 rookies. Sidney Jones, Artie Burns. That's the 2 vets. And then I have Justin Coleman starting at nickel. And then that 6th spot, pretty much just give it to Michael Jackson, because Trey Brown is probably going to start the year on the physically unable to perform list, the PUP list. So that will keep him out for 4 weeks. So while Trey Brown's out, you need another corner, and Michael Jackson can play on the left and the right. So I don't think anybody needs to be a surprise cut to get him on the roster. Miles Adams, on the other hand, that's different, because I only have room for 6 defensive tackles on my 53-man roster projection. I got Big Al and Brian Monet. There's your 2 noses right there. Poona Ford and Shelby Harris. All right, well, there's 4. I'm going to throw Quentin Jefferson in there. You got to keep Q Jeff. I don't know why they had him playing against the Bears, though. My man was taking on double teams for free against the Bears. Q ain't no take on a double team type of dude, man. He's a strong dude, but preseason double teams, get me out of here. Anyway, there's your 5th defensive tackle right there. Only got room for 1 more spot. Either it goes to LJ Collier or it goes to Miles Adams. I think it's going to Miles Adams. I feel like the coaching staff has said in all the nicest ways possible that there's just no room for LJ as long as Miles is on the squad. So, but I don't feel like that's a surprise cut either. I feel like was LJ inactive 7 times last year or something, like a healthy scratch? They made LJ a healthy scratch on his birthday. That was the I want to say the Colts game, the week 1 last year. Usually they made LJ inactive, flew him to Indianapolis, and had made him inactive on his birthday. That is foul. So, but it's also the reality of the business. They don't really care. It's his birthday. But I say that to say he's already kind of fallen out a favor. If you go back and listen to Clint Hurt's interview on, I want to say Wednesday, excuse me, I think someone asked about LJ, and he said something to the effect of, I tell these guys, you can't make the club if you're in the tub, in terms of just the cold tub, staying healthy. And then I followed that up with a question about Miles, and Clint talked about Miles like he was his firstborn son. So I think the decision has probably already been made. LJ did not play against the Cowboys. I think he traveled to the game, but didn't play. So Miles played well in all 3 preseason games, so well that he got a podium interview for the first time on Friday night. LJ didn't play in any of the preseason games and is injured. So I think there's your cut there to make room for Miles.
How much of a new scheme is Pete hiding? Are they really adding that much blitzing and 3-4 coverage to the defense without at least testing it out in the preseason?
Yeah, 100%. And that's not a Pete thing. Most teams are pretty vanilla. You won't see a lot of exotic blitzes. You won't see a lot of like post-snap rotations by your safeties or your coverages. And no. There's no advantage to trotting that out there, especially while you're trotting out backups. Like there's a specific package that they have that features like 3 safeties. It's like Jamal, Josh Jones, and Quandre all on the field together. And in that package, they're still in like their 3-4, but they pull Cody Barton off. None of you guys have seen that. I've seen it a bunch. I've written about it a little bit, but I haven't talked about it much. But yeah, there's no reason to test that out in a game. Why? So Denver can see it and game plan for it. When you're playing a veteran quarterback like Russ, your first game, and you don't want to show none of that. So yeah, it's been pretty vanilla. Most teams are like that. I talked to a defensive player after the Bears game. I was like, what do you think of the defense? He's like, man, we ain't even showing nothing. We're just running our basic stuff. He was like, you'll see in the regular season, it's going to look way different. And that's on purpose, So yeah, a lot of the stuff that we've written about and that you've heard Pete or Clint talk about, they're not showing it. It's all in practice. They're prepping it. They're repping it. And Pete said a few times, more times than I can remember him saying in the preseason, perhaps trying to excuse his team's poor behavior or their poor play. He keeps mentioning the guys that aren't playing. He's done it every game now. He's like, yeah, I got a lot of guys, who are going to help us this year who ain't playing, because his team keeps losing. They keep losing because their guys aren't out there. There's a lot of high-priced dudes on the bench. What is DK? $24 million a year. Jamal $17.5, Quandre $13 million, and Tyler like $17 million. That's a lot of expensive dudes on the pine. Not to mention Rashad and Kenneth Walker on the bench too. So I think it's gonna, and Jordan Brooks, who didn't play in the preseason. So yeah, the defense is gonna look way different. You can trust me on that.
Shout out that was from @orbit_axis. The next one about running backs. How many running backs do the Seahawks keep? Does Darwin make the 53? And is he one of your favorite bubble guys? This is from @HawksFan206 and Brad.
Let's see. How many running backs do they keep? That was tough. Usually they keep 5, but because they drafted 2 receivers, I think I freaked the receiver numbers. I might have had 7 receivers making it, and I double checked. They have done that before. I think they did that the year that they drafted DK, which would make sense because that year they drafted 3 receivers. You kind of wanted to keep them all on the roster. I can't remember if John Ursua made it initially. But anyway, so I think they're only going to keep 4 running backs if everyone's healthy. So if Kenneth Walker is fine, if Rashad Penny is fine, Rashad has COVID, hopefully Rashad gets better. COVID sucks to have. If Rashad, Kenneth, DJ, and Travis are all fine, I think you can just get by with those 4, especially because your receivers play special teams. So you don't necessarily need like a Darwin Thompson or a Josh Johnson to be out there, being the main guys on punt coverage or whatever, because you can have a Bo Melton, a Derek Young, Penny Hart, if he makes it. You can have those guys play special teams. So I think that is what ends up happening there. It's tricky because I don't know what to do, Chris, with Penny Hart. I feel like he just keeps making plays, man. And I mean, if they keep Tyler, DK, Marquise Goodwin, Pete basically said he's making the team. D. Eskridge has to make it. There's 4 right there. You keep your 2 draft picks. 6. Do you keep Penny Hart? Do you keep Freddie Swain? What would you do? Here's your surprise cut. Honestly, is it Freddie?
He's shown too much to cut him.
Who has Penny or Freddie?
Freddie. I'm just talking last year. I don't really care for preseason. He's not out there. I mean, I think he's a lock. How do you cut a guy that's always open for Russ? I mean, you could.
You don't got Russ.
That is true. There's going to be it's going to be a different team for sure, especially when it comes to that receiving core, because Russ was making a lot of amazing throws and guys were just making the play. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be consistent again.
The thing with Freddie that kind of concerns me is I don't really see. I want some of these other guys who aren't Tyler and DK to be able to consistently win one-on-one matchups, and not to say that like Penny Hart's like this amazing man coverage beater. I just feel like Penny just does so much. I mean, they handed the ball off to Penny today. You know, it's just Penny Hart, that is. Like, handed it off to him. He covers kicks. He's on the special teams, like, blocking units. He can go make plays up in the – he's a guy you can hand the ball to on jet sweeps or just a direct handoff. The direct handoff didn't go super well. But, like, man, that right there is a tough – because it's also not like they're super invested in Freddie. What was he, like a 6th-round pick?
Yeah.
That is somebody you could part with if you so choose, and it's not like Freddie lit it up in the regular season, or excuse me, in the preseason. I mean, he had a drop,
yeah.
Today he had a drop
today,
yeah. I mean,
or Friday, excuse me, yeah.
Is that might be the surprise drop. We can move on to the next question, but the more I think, I'm gonna have to sit there and think about that. That might be the tough call I make on my 53 is maybe having Penny over Freddie.
Okay, you gave a surprise offensive cut. What about defense? And this is from In Lerma 3.
I don't think there'd be a surprise defensive cut. I don't think Marquise Blair gets cut, especially not while Ryan Neal is hurt. I think if Ryan Neal was healthy and Josh Jones was healthy, which he is, and then you have Quandre and Jamal, those are your 4 safeties right there. I think you can get by with that. I don't think you can only have 3 safeties, assuming like Ryan Neal maybe starts the season on injured reserve, which would knock him out for 4 games. So I think everything on defense will be pretty much as is. I think the only thing on defense that probably Seattle needs to do is probably trade for some backup linebackers, because I just don't have a ton of faith in the guys that they have behind Cody and Jordan Brooks. I just think that between Nick Bellore, actually Nick's fine. But like after that, Lakeem Williams, DeBlanco. The broadcast loved DeBlanco today, boy. You would think Michael Robinson and Michael Bennett were at DeBlanco's bar mitzvah. Like, they was loving that man. I don't even know if he's Jewish, but just say it just because. Yeah, but him, Tanner Muse, I'm not really loving that unit. I think they're going to need to look elsewhere there. I mean, I even asked Pete Carroll about the inside linebackers on Thursday, and he was like, yeah, we're pretty new there. We need some guys to start learning some stuff. And I was like, oh boy, that's Pete speak for these guys are not cutting it. So, yeah, I think if anything, if there's going to be a trade or like some waiver claims, it's going to be at linebacker, I think.
2 more. This one's from Brian Malone at DPT Malone. Do you see anyone from the game outside of Miles that jumped off the page to earn themselves a roster spot from tonight? Friday, excuse me.
I do think DeBlanco made a good case. I will say that. I do think he made a good case. I think Joey Blunt kind of hurt himself. Houston, 32, can't remember his first name. Jameson, I think is his first name. Yeah, I don't think he helped himself. I think Darwin Thompson helped himself a little bit, but no, I don't think outside of I think Michael Jackson was already kind of a lock, so I don't think he could have helped himself much. You know who helped himself, and it's not necessarily to make the team, but I really think that DJ Dallas and Travis Homer are just much better runners now. Like, they seem to just, it's almost like when Rashad Penny told us last year, he said it like kind of half-heartedly, but I think he meant it. He was like, yeah, sometimes I just be forgetting that I'm 236 pounds, like, and I don't know how you forget that, but I get what he was saying. And with Travis, I don't know if anybody, you guys have all seen pictures of Travis Homer. That boy is built.
Yeah.
He is built. And then DJ Dallas is not small either. And DJ Dallas is only in like his 3rd year playing running back or something, maybe 5th year. Like, he played quarterback growing up, and he played everything but running back growing up. So he's kind of new to the position. But like, those dudes, they look much better running the ball between the tackles, better than I'm used to seeing. And I think you guys would probably agree as if who've watched, Travis Homer, who's watched DJ Dallas, I just feel like those dudes are just running so much better. Like Travis, is Travis the one who had the run called back today because of a hold or something
Yep.
like that? Like I think Travis has been running the ball really, really, really well. I think he's probably had quite of all the returning guys. He probably had one of the best camps because he just looked like a guy who you can actually trust to run the ball between the tackles. I would not have said that if you'd asked me about that in like, I don't know, just even in July. I'm trying to look up Travis's stats as I answer this because I'm pretty sure he ended up being their leading rusher. Let's see. Travis had, oh no, I think Dallas ended up leading him, but like Travis averaged 7.5 yards a pop, on his carries, man. That's pretty good. I think he only had one negative run, in the preseason. He did a really good job. So I don't think I have anyone who helped themselves in this particular game, but Travis and DJ, I think they probably made Pete Carroll feel a little bit better about not having Ken for an extended period of time as like a between the tackles runner because DJ and Travis can do it now.
Last one, I'm gonna combine both of them. Mike, how does it feel to be $100 richer? That's from Alex Zerbe. And the last one, what are you spending on your $100? Or what are you going? Wow, I'm just screwing this up. What are you spending your $100 on? And that is from Chris Hamilton at 206_Chris.
Oh, I love being $100 richer. That's an excellent question, the best question we ever got on the podcast. My honest opinion there. I knew it was coming. I probably shouldn't have done this, but I had mentioned the bet I didn't say who it was between. I actually didn't even say it was a bet. I guess it could have been a Vegas wager the way I phrased it. But I mentioned to someone on the team during camp, I was like, I got money on Gino. And that person, they looked at me and it was like, you're good. And this was 2 or 3 weeks into camp. I can't remember. I actually could go back and look and see which day it was, but I'm not going to right now. But anyway, point is, I knew it was in the bag. I've known that for a while. I knew that OTAs. I really knew it when I went back and watched Broncos tape. I was like, yeah, nah, this guy's not going to work in a Pete Carroll scheme. And that's what it came down to. That's why we spent so much time earlier on the show talking about the fit with Pete. Sadly, I'm not going to do anything extravagant with the bread. This show will be out this show will be out Saturday morning. So a lot of you guys are listening to this Saturday. Chris and I are in a fantasy league together, a league that Chris won, actually, last year. And the buy-in we're doing a live draft at the homie's house Saturday night, and the buy-in is like $50. I voted for it to stay at 25. Somehow it got changed to 50. But anyway, I told the owner of the league, we're drafting at his house, that I have the $50 for him when I get to his house. So I'm spending half of that just on fantasy. Probably, as bad as I am at fantasy, it's probably going to end up back in Chris's hands by freaking January. But anyway, that's when I spend at least half of it on. The other half of it.
No, you get your money back if I win, though.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's too complicated to explain. But yeah.
No, you're good.
Chris wins the league, everybody gets their bread back. Because Chris doesn't pay the cover. But yeah, so I'll spend the first 50 on that, and I think the next 50, I think I'm just gonna get it all in ones and hold on to it. Just specifically those ones, I'm gonna hold on to them. And if I go on the road, see where I go on the road that's cool this year. Oh, I go to New Orleans. Boom, strip club in New Orleans. There we go. Some of that will be going towards the cover, and then the rest of the first black stripper I see, because I only tip black strippers. Still holding on to that in 2022. That was I love that we ended the show on that.
Why not? Well, you had $100. Moral of the story: don't bet on Drew Lock. Geno Smith did his thing, didn't turn the ball over, kept the offense competitive, just ran the offense. Good job. You win. You didn't lose it.
There are some quarterback competitions where I could see betting on Drew. Like if he had to go against like Sam Darnold, Mitch Trubisky, Carson Wentz, some guys like that. I could see him winning those. Like if he was to end up in a competition, depending on how this year goes with like Tua, I could see him winning that.
Yeah, Tua does not sound promising.
We'll see this year.
Definitely.
We'll see this year what Tua does. Tua and Jalen Hurts. Honestly, all the Alabama quarterbacks, Mac Jones too. I could see Drew winning that. But yeah, in this competition, I knew it was, Geno. I knew Geno wouldn't, to go back to my analogy about having a 30-yard head start in a 100-meter dash race. I knew Geno's shoes were tied. He wasn't going to fall. I knew he wasn't going to trip and fall and bust his ass. So there you go. So, yeah, that's shout out to Drew. Shout out to Geno. I will say this about Drew, though. I've been joking a lot. Drew, after losing the job, did come up on the podium. I'm obviously in Seattle. I'm not in Dallas. But he did come up on the podium after the game and just talk, just held his press conference as normal. It's very easy to do that when you win the job. It's much harder to do that when you lose the job after throwing 3 interceptions. So, kudos to Drew on that. Just, kind of just being a professional about it. Everybody doesn't do that. I've been doing this job for a little bit. Guys never want to talk when it's something bad. Whether it's they got illegal trouble, they've had a bad game, they lost a big game. No one ever wants to get up there in front of the cameras. So to do that when he didn't really have to, I wouldn't have. So yeah, shout out to Drew on that. But now we're on the Geno show.
Geno show it is. So
week 1, man. Week 1. As much as I thought it was fun, the idea of getting Drew versus Russ and 2 guys against their old teams, I do like the Geno versus Russ kind of narrative.
Yeah, the backup versus the starter.
The backup who I'm pretty sure, and Geno will never admit this, he's never told it to me, to be very clear, I'm not reporting this, but I do imagine that Geno probably felt that he could have won the games that Russ lost last year. He probably feels like he would have scored points against Green Bay, which he would have. He probably feels like he would have won the game at Washington, which he might have. What's the other one they lost? Oh, Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Probably feels like he would have beat Colt McCoy. So, which he very well may have. So I do think that there's some ego to Geno. One of those years, I think it was 2 years ago, there was like 10 black starting quarterbacks in week 1. It was like the most ever. And Geno quote tweeted like ESPN's tweet stating that and said it should be 11. Like 11 black starters. Like there's some ego to him. So he wants to win this too. He wants to beat Russ as well. Not like an I hate you way, but just like, hey, I can. We're equals. I'm not your backup. I can do this too. So again, Geno ain't gonna say none of that, and he's not told me that. I just kind of can tell by how he kicks it that's how he feels about the situation. So that'll be fun. Can't wait for that. Can't wait for us to reveal more about our live podcast plans. Coming in the works. We will announce the details soon. So stay tuned.
Yes.
For that, we will. Chris is the evil genius working on the details.
It'll be taken care of. We're getting it done for sure.
Yes. So once that happens, the details will come out and we'll be ready to roll and see y'all faces as we do a pod. Coming soon.
There it is. It's been an episode of Seahawks Man to Man. We appreciate you guys for rocking with us for the last 75 minutes. On that note, we will catch you guys in about 2 weeks or so, week and a half. We'll come back with something for you. But other than that, Mike, is there anything you want to add?
Just on a scheduling note, probably won't have a pod in this kind of dead week. That's like the first of college football and stuff like that. We'll be back before the Broncos game. Promise you we'll be back before the Broncos game. That week we will be back. So probably take like a little week off, work on some of the live pod stuff, and then we'll be back. There it is. On that note, we'll catch you guys later. We out.